is the head of neurophysical therapy at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi. Dr. Rajiv Agarwal has published more than six numbers of international papers specifically with respect to Parkinson's disease and has served as a eminent speaker in many international and national conferences. Without wasting much time, we will invite the resource person for today, Dr. Rajiv Agarwal, for today's session, please.
Uh, Thank you very much, Dr. Ganesh and the CRC Lucknow and the whole organizing committee. I'm thankful to the director of IPH and the CRC Lucknow for giving me this opportunity to share with you my experience with the Parkinson management. Today, I am not going with the all details of the Parkinson's, but a very specific thing about the freezing management in the Parkinson disease, which is a most troublesome thing and which is least influenced by the medicine and the deep brain stimulation for the Parkinson disease. So this is a domain where the physiotherapists have the most role in management of the Parkinson disease. So I thought to choose this topic. Should we start with the session, or we should wait for some time? It's okay.
Sir, we can start, sir.
We can start. Okay, thank you. So I will share my screen. Is it visible to everyone? Only Dr. Ganesh can tell me, is it okay?
Nice, sir. It's not. 1 minute, sir.
Sir, it's visible.
सर विजिबल है
Sorry?
विजिबल है सर
Sir, it's
Visible?
Yeah, sir, it is clearly visible.
Okay. So let's go ahead. So today I will be talking about the breaking the freeze in Parkinson disease. I am Dr. Rajiv Agarwal, as Dr. Ganesh introduced me.
Sir,
And
online.
sorry? Hello?
No, sir, please.
Okay, fine. So I attribute my much of the understanding to the various programs regarding the Parkinson management, and the most important was my physiotherapy summer school training in the Newcastle, United Kingdom in September 2017. It was a European group where I was the only Indian or the Asian person in that team to learn about this physiotherapeutic management of the Parkinson disease. I have been regularly participating and attending the Movement Disorder Society conference, which is the apical body in the management of the Parkinson's and the other movement disorders. And I am regularly presenting my researches in those conferences. These are a few more trainings at different platforms regarding the Parkinson disease management. And I attribute my regards to my mentors in the management of Parkinson disease, which are the basic, pillars and the stalwarts in the Parkinson disease management for physiotherapy. Professor Lynn Roster, she is in Newcastle. Professor Alice Neubert, she is in Belgium. Professor Maggie Morris from Australia, Melbourne. And she is a Professor Madhuri Bihari, who is the ex-HOD of the neurology of the AIIMS, who had been my guide also for the PhD, and where we did research on the Parkinson management. So before going to the freezing, just a brief about the Parkinson disease. So I title it Parkinson disease or just Parkinson's. So worldwide nowadays, the notion is that we should reduce the notion of the disease in the Parkinson. So just Parkinson is enough rather than mentioning it the Parkinson disease. Right. So nowadays they don't say the Parkinson PD patients, rather they say persons with Parkinson's, PWP, persons with Parkinson's. We all have 1 in 40 chances of developing Parkinson's in our lifetime. And prevalence of Parkinson disease in India is around 60 to 100 per 1 lakh persons. Without known much reason, the Parsis communities in India has a greater prevalence, that is 192 for 1 lakh, maybe due to their immigrations from the different part of the world or whatsoever. Approximately 1% above the age of 60 and 2% above the age of 80 has Parkinson disease. So as the age progress, we all know that it's a neurodegeneration of the brain, specifically the substantia nigra, pars compacta, and locus ceruleus areas in the brain, in the midbrain areas. So as the age increases, the chances of Parkinson disease increases. And the prevalence of the Parkinson is increasing as the geriatric population is rising, our life expectancy is increasing. So as the people are aging, so more and more number of Parkinson is seen in the society. Parkinson is one of the commonest progressive neurodegenerative disease and amongst the commonest disabling disease in the elderly. And it has profound effect on balance and gait. Interestingly, 40 to 70% of people with Parkinson's falls every year, and 1/3 of these fall repeatedly, which is an alarming number. And risk of fall and acquiring fracture among person with Parkinson's is double to comparatively healthy controls. Now coming to the other point, normally. Hello. Dr. Ganesh. Hello. I am hearing my own.
Hello.
Yeah, Ganesh.
Yes, sir. Are you able to present, sir?
Yes, I am able to present by my. I am listening my own sound. It is echoing. I don't know.
It's fine right now, sir.
Yeah, it is echoing. Now it's okay.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It is okay now. Right. Good. Okay. Right. So the point is now, is Parkinson's a movement disorder, which we have to understand. It is usually had been considered as a movement disorder, the Parkinson's, because of its cardinal symptoms, which is a trap. Trap is the tremors, rigidity, akinesia or bradykinesia, and the postural instability. But in last 2 decades, there is a lot of interest in the non-motor symptoms, which are ubiquitous. Matlab in almost most of the population, we see the non-motor symptoms even more than the motor symptoms. And it has been seen in the prodromal stage, when we don't see any motor symptoms in the Parkinson, maybe 10, 20 or 30 years before a person develops motor symptom in Parkinson's, they have non-motor symptoms. And these non-motor symptoms range widely, including the cognitive like anxiety and depressions, sleep disorders like restless leg syndromes, or REM sleep and behavior disorders, or some non-specific kinds of pain. Constipation is another very, very common problem in these people. Anosmia, difficulty, or altered sensations of smelling is again a very, very common non-motor symptoms. In that some people have a difficulty in the urinary problems, All right. So there's a large range of the non-motor symptoms which are commonly seen in the Parkinson, and many of these patients much before any motor symptom develops. So it's now another question whether it's a movement disorder or it's a Parkinson syndrome, which includes both motor and the non-motor symptoms. So we must keep in mind while managing any Parkinson's person that non-motor symptoms are much more prevalent and disabling at times. So these all the things I mentioned: depression, anxiety, apathy, hallucinations is also very common. Some of these may be the side effects of the medications that these people get, but by and large, generally these non-motor symptoms are very highly prevalent in these patients. Drooling, dysphagia, hyposmia, constipation, nausea, and vomiting, apart from insomnia, somnolence, RAM, sleep behavior disorders, sweating abnormalities, sexual dysfunctions, bladder urgency, orthostatic hypotensions, hallucination, apathy, anxiety, depression, and cognitive impairment. So there is a large range of the non-motor symptoms. Now coming to the main part of this freezing management, it is the first is the akinesia. We have to understand what is the akinesia. Akinesia is difficulty in initiating a movements. So the two types of akinesia is seen in this Parkinson's. One is the ignition disturbance, like persons who have difficulty in starting the first step in motor sequence. Uh, that is called as the ignition disturbance, and other is the motor freezing. Motor freezing is the motor block. That is when a person is walking or doing any activities, midways he feels like there is a block, he cannot pursue the movement, so that is called as motor block or motor freezing. So this is mainly contributing to the freezing when a person is walking and passing through a narrow pathway or through a door, right, or reaching to a destination, they feel a motor block. So to understand the pathophysiology behind these movement impairments, we have to understand first is the motor instability. Just say this: this man is a Parkinson's, and while doing this movement, you see that his rhythm is impaired, and the speed also changes. There is an incremental instability, like person will try to increase the speed and gradually it will reduce automatically, then he will try to increase it and automatically it reduces. So this instability contributes towards the freezing, although it's not very well understood, but this is commonly seen in the Parkinson's. You all can see this motor instability. Now, next, I would like to show you a video of shuffling gait. A person, he is a person of young onset Parkinson disease. Any persons who develops Parkinson before the age of 45, and sometimes we say 40, then we consider it as a young onset Parkinson disease. And the characteristic of this shuffling gait is there is a reduced stride length, reduced ground clearance, and reversal of the hip pattern. All of you can see this. This man is walking with a broad base of support, reduced gait speed, no arm movements, no arm swing. There is also a tremor in the right hand, and focus on he is dragging the feet and the ground balance is impaired.
Sorry, sir. Sorry to disturb you, sir. But the slide are stuck now, so we cannot see your video, sir.
Can't you see this video?
No, sir.
No,
it is,
sir.
Dr. Ganesh, videos is not visible.
सर विजिबल है
Rajiv sir, it's not visible, sir. Actually, your slides are not visible. Actually, it's not moving, sir. It's stuck.
From in
So
my
the slides are
system,
not changing.
maybe what's the network issue or what?
Nice.
Can you see now that I have reduced my screen size?
Yeah, it's fine, sir. Right. सही है क्या?
सर आपका वीडियो विजिबल है
आप लोगों को विजिबल नहीं है अभी देखो
सर विजिबल है
अब वीडियो देखो
विजिबल है सर
अभी वीडियो विजिबल है
यस
विजिबल है
सर
सर
now focus in his abnormal base width, asymmetrical gait, reduced stride length, no arm swing,
Hello.
okay, now the video was visible.
Sir, right now your video is visible.
Okay, so this was the shuffling gait. The other gaits you can see in the Parkinson are the dyskinetic gait, where the dyskinesia is a commonly thing, and with some dystonia of the plantar flexors or the trunk lateral flexors or the finger and the wrist flexors in the dystonic movements. And it is intermittent and fluctuating problem with the choreotic, like a person is like feels like dancing when there is patient is on the syndopa with after a few years of the syndopa. A person can have a dyskinetic gait, like the abnormal kinds of movements you can see in the whole body parts, in the trunk, in the upper limb and in the lower limb. That is a dyskinetic gait. Another kind of gait you can find in this Parkinson is the fascinating gait. Fascinating is due to the incremental motor instability. The thing we see in the previous videos, like instability, in that a person tries to increase his speed to reach to the goal, and basically to catch the target, the person becomes into the fascinating thing. Then in the fascinating gait, usually you find a forward bending of the trunk. So commonly you will see when a person tries to cross the gate or try to sit down, see a chair to sit down, his speed increases and he tries to catch his center of gravity. And with that, most of the time, after this fascinating, the patients also freeze at that time. So this is another type of gait you will find in this Parkinson's. Usually in most of the gait patterns, you will find large step-to-step variability, and the dual tasking has adverse effect. What is the dual tasking? Any person, Parkinson person, if he does two things together, like two motor tasks or one motor task and one cognitive task, then one task usually gets affected. For example, if a person is walking and along with that he's talking, or if he is eating, this is a motor task, or manipulating something with the hand, or carrying a tray in the hands, or he has some another cognitive task like he's thinking anything, right? So any secondary task, dual task, maybe it motor or the cognitive task, will impair his primary task, that is the walking. Usually you will see it. After this gait patterns, let's talk about the turning. Turning is more, cognitive, requires more cognitive control than the simple gait pattern, right? So it requires more planning in the brain. So, and it requires the dynamic postural control. So turning is problematic in the Parkinson's. Normally you will find in a healthy person, when a person turns or tries to turn on the one side, initially he looks on that side, so eyes move to that side, then his head, trunk and the feet moves in a sequential manner when he turns. But in a person with Parkinson's, basically you will see an en bloc turn. Matlab he turns as a whole body. You might have seen in the last video when that young man was turning, he was not turning like with the neck. Normally person moves the neck or the trunk. He was stopping and the turning as a whole body. So it's an en bloc turn. So they move their eyes, head, trunk and legs simultaneously rather than in a sequential pattern. So turning in Parkinson is dependent on the neck rigidity, as rigidity is one of the component of the Parkinson's. So a person who's having a higher neck rigidity, they often result in increased time to complete a turn. So that is another contributory factor. Axial rigidity and loss of intersegmental flexibility are also contributory to turning difficulties in the person with Parkinson's. Number of steps required to take a turn are generally more in these persons compared to the healthy adults. So turning is problematic. Now, how we define a freezing of gait? It's a brief episode of absent or markedly reduced forward progression despite the intention to walk. So the person freeze at that point. So he cannot take the steps. The specific features of hesitation, high frequency trembling like leg movements. He wants to walk. I will show you the another video later on. These kinds of movements while a patient tries to turn down, his feet gets glued to the ground and trembling like leg movements you can see. And hastened steps called fascination, which I just explained. So shuffling forward with very small steps with a faster speed, the fascination is there, and which usually followed by the freezing of the person. You can see this lady who is having the lots of freezing. So this is the shuffling gait. So there was an ignition block, and now you see how she is shuffling. She is unable to take the steps.
Rajiv sir, the slides are not visible, sir.
Not visible.
Sir.
So I am running this video. Can't you see this video? Hello.
No, sir.
Sorry.
नहीं sir.
कुछ नहीं नजर आ रहा. क्या नजर आ रहा है आप लोगों को?
We are able, sir. We are able to see your video, sir.
You can see me, all right, but you can't see this.
Sir. Sir.
But I am sharing my screen, so that screen is not visible to you.
No, sir.
क्या लिखा है? Your screen.
1 minute, sir. I will ask my IT consultant to be in touch with you, sir.
Your screen is still visible to others. So it is showing. It is telling that my screen is visible to others.
Your video is visible, sir.
No, even I can remove my video. I don't want to be seen, you know. Now you should see the presentation.
राजीव सर,
Yes, please tell.
पीपीटी को ना जस्ट रिज्यूम कर दीजिए, रिज्यूम वहीं पे जहाँ पे
कर
वो
दिया
किया था ना,
कर दिया
प्रेजेंट ना हो। हाँ
कर
बस,
दिया।
हो गया सर, हो रहा है।
अभी आया क्या?
हाँ सर,
हाँ, हो गया।
हो गया।
आया सर।
ये बीच में गायब हो जाता है यार।
एक्चुअली क्या है ना कि सर, बीच में किसी ने वो कर दिया ना, प्रेजेंट कर दिया, तो आपकी ना वो चली जाती है स्क्रीन।
Oh, you told me yesterday the same thing.
हाँ
So this is you can see this lady is shuffling and is unable to take the steps. So this is a lot of freezing this lady is facing. You see such a small step she is taking, and hmm. Is it still visible to all?
यस सर, विजुअल है।
Okay. So all of you could see this shuffling gate with lots of freezing. There was ignition block when she approached to the door or to the sink. She felt a motor block. So all kinds of presentations of the freezing of gate was there with this lady, right? So turning and hurdles are the most important triggers for the freezing that we saw in this particular video. Let's a little understand about this pathophysiology, which is very poorly understood till date. Freezers have a altered anticipatory postural adjustment, APA. So when we start walking, we shift our weight to the non-weight bearing side, to the weight bearing side, and we take the steps. We shift the weight and take the steps from the non-weight bearing side to take the steps. So these postural adjustment is impaired in these freezers peoples. They also have abnormal neural circuitry, which involves the motor areas, basal ganglia, cognitive control network, and pedunculopontine nucleus. So these multi-system cortical pathologies, but no exhaustive explanation of freezing in Parkinson's. So that is the main reason that freezing is the most poorly managed in these persons. The syndopa doesn't have much of the effect, which is considered a magical medicine for this kind of problems or the Parkinson's. And in fact, even the DBS is not able to have a very impressive effect on this freezing. So that remains a challenge for most of these persons, making them more disabled. This study, which was done in 2017, that have shown that you can see in this bar graph, that freezers have the higher postural instability, and medication does not influence balance difference between freezers and the non-freezers. So we all understand now they have a more of the postural instability along with the freezing. So let's come to the assessment part of the persons who are facing the freezing. So first is the subjective assessment. You have to ask whether they experience freezing. If yes, under what circumstances, and you can use the FOG questionnaire, which is readily available on the internet. Then do they use any strategies to help compensate for any of these problems? If yes, does that work? You have to notify it. That is a subjective assessment. Is there any significant environmental consideration like living arrangements, whether he lives in a apartment or if in a big bungalows, or what kind of things, whether he is employed or working, and if he's facing the problems while working over there, then what is the support system that person has, and any specific challenging environments like using the public conveyance or using the stairs or anything, and what are their expectations. So these few points need to be considered while managing a person with freezing. Then you can come to the objective assessment. Observe the subjects or the person's gait for the quality of gait. Like you have to see the posture, whether it is a forward. Some people have a forward bend posture. Some people have a sideways bend posture, like scoliotic kind of the posture. Some people even have a backward, bent posture. So you have to look for that. The knees may be bent, or they have, stooped kind of posture may be there in these people. Then you have to see the arm swing. Some people have only one arm swing and some people don't have any arm swing. Then step length, the asymmetry of the steps, that is a step variability, and the postural sway while walking. Then second is the ability to change. So you can ask the person to walk, and then you can ask to increase the speed or reduce the speed or stop it, or start walking and start and take a turn. And during these all movements, instructions, whether the person experience freezing or he has a more gait problems during these changes. Then ability to negotiate the doorways or changes in the surface, like a smooth surface or like a surface with a lot of obstructions in between, or the narrow spaces. So how do they negotiate? These are things you have to observe. And ability to walk backwards. Many of these persons, feel a lot of postural abnormality or imbalance while they walk backwards, and even often they tend to fall when they walk backwards. This is a standard 10-meter walk test. In that you have to mark the 12-meter distance with 1 meter walk on each side, and ask the person to walk at normal speed. When a person crosses like 1 meter mark, note down the time and the number of steps they take to complete that 10 meter. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes sir, yes sir.
And you can see the screen also?
Yes sir.
Good.
बट क्या हो रहा है ना कि ना जो आपकी पीपीटी है ना, जैसे आप उसको फुल स्क्रीन कर रहे हैं वो वहीं पे स्टक हो जा रही है। तो आप उसको ना फुल स्क्रीन नहीं कीजिए, ऐसे ही चलाते रहिए, तो फिर वो
अभी तो फुल स्क्रीन चल रही है ये।
हाँ, तो फिर उसको ना हटा दीजिए सर। बोलो। हाँ
अब ठीक है?
हाँ
अभी ठीक है पक्का?
हाँ
चलूंगा।
25 ये जो स्लाइड है आपकी 25 है, अब वो हो गई 26 हो गई।
26 हो गई, ठीक है ना?
हाँ हाँ हाँ,
चले
ऐसे
आगे।
ही चलाते रहिए सर।
ठीक है।
ठीक।
So this is some normal parameters for the walking velocity norms by the age. So you can take the total time taken to complete the 10 meter and divide that time from the 10, and you can get the gait velocity. You can also calculate the percentage of the gait velocity compared to the normal. So like a person who walks like a 1 meter per second and normally say 1.5, so 1 divided by 1.5 into 100, so that will give you the percentage of the gait velocity compared to the normal. Then another standard test is the time up and go test. I think most of the physiotherapists know about this test, where we mark a 3 meter distance when a person sits comfortably on a chair, and you ask the person to stand up and walk the 3 meter and come back and sit down again on the chair. So the total time taken to complete this task is called as the time up and go test. If it is less than 10 seconds, which is normal. If it is 11 to 20 seconds, 19 seconds, patient is independent and can manage without supervision. If it is 20 to 29 seconds, there is a high risk of fall. And if it is more than 30 seconds, then he is dependent in most of the ADLs and the mobility. So time and go in is very standard test. Now, something very specific about this freezing management, where I told you the dual task affects the person's capacity to walk down. So we have to calculate objectively the dual task interference. So how we do that? By completing a task under both single task and the dual task condition, the amount of dual task interference can be calculated relative to the single task performance. ये अभी मैं दिखाता हूँ how you will do it. So percentage of the dual task interference is in the time taken in the single task minus the dual task divided by the single task performance into 100. So the Lynn Roster developed this, the one I told you, the working with the University of Newcastle. So for example, let's take a person walks a 10 meter in single task situation. You ask a person to walk like in a 10-meter walk test I told you. Suppose he take 10 seconds to complete that 10 meters. So speed becomes at single task is a 1 meter per second. He can recite the 4 words say in 10 seconds. So then the performance at single task becomes the 0.4 words per second. Okay. Now we will ask do the both tasks together. He will walk the 10-meter walk. Along with that, he will recite the 4 words. You can ask the person to recite like the 4 capitals of the different countries, or 4 states of the India, anything, or 4 names of the player, name of the players, not the 4, but any numbers in that particular time, right? So in that, whatever number of words they can recite, that you will note down and will divide with the 10 seconds. That was the time taken to complete the 10-meter walk. Now in the dual task situation, that person will walk the 10 meter in the dual task situations. Now let's say it takes the 15 seconds to complete that 10 meter, which was earlier he was doing in 10 seconds. And now he could only recite the 3 words. So both of the task has deteriorated in the dual task, for example. Now speed at dual task has become 10 divided by 15. So 0.67 meters per second. And performance at dual task, like the reciting the words, that has become 2 words in 15 seconds. 3 words. So in 3 words in 15 seconds, so he's taking only 0.2 words per second. 0.2 words per second. So the dual task cost interference we calculate with the motor task 1 minus 0.067. In single task the speed was 1 meter per second, and in the dual task it is 0.67. So as I told you, the single task minus dual task divided by the single task interference formula I gave you, 1 minus 0.67 divided by 1 into 100. So 33% is the interference with the dual task. While for the cognitive thing, 0.4 minus 0.2 divided by 0.4 into 100. So it's a 50% interference. The total dual task cost in combine both and divide by 2. So it came out to be 41.5% interference due to the dual task. Is that clear? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Clear.
Thank you. So now, if total...
Yes, sir. Audible, sir. Please continue.
If dual task cost or interference is 0, then effect seen in one task is the consequence of an overcompensation in the other task. So that like I calculated the total dual task cost. So in this it is positive, 41%, 41.5. If the total cost becomes 0, so one is improving, other is deteriorating. So in that, effect is seen in one task is the consequence of an overcompensation in the other task. So do the dual task training to change the priority. Okay, so you try to improve the effect which is deteriorating due to the dual task. Try to focus on that and do the dual task training. When the total dual task cost is higher than 0, like in last case, an inadequate level of attentional capacity is available to perform both the tasks. So again, you do the dual task training to improve the attentional capacity. But if the total dual task cost is lower than 0, so which is negative, then it means there is no dual task problems are present, and even a positive effect can be seen when performing the dual task. So no dual task training is required. So this is how we decide whether we will do a dual task training or not in these persons. This is my book chapter, which is Parkinson disease in India, from clinics to bench. Mainly the editors were Professor Madhuri Bihari and S.P. Gorti. So I wrote this chapter, Balance and Gait in Parkinson disease. You can go through this chapter to understand better about the balance and the gait problems in this Parkinson's. Now, coming to the strategies, the management of the freezing. So we have to understand the management into the 4 components. One is the spatio-temporal gait. So when a person walks, his spatial parameters like the step length or the cadence or the width, that can change, or the temporal, the speed of the step time or the stride time, they all varies. So to regulate them, to control them, you have to use the cueing strategies and the attention strategies. What is the cueing strategies? Cue is the any sensory stimulus or a cognitive stimulus which provides a person to normalize his walk or to reduce the freezing. So that is called as cueing. I will tell you later on about this. And attention, like avoiding the dual tasking. So focusing on the work on the particular walking will improve his walking. So that is spatio-temporal gait parameters improvement. Then comes the rescue strategy. Like even after doing all these things, still a person freeze. Then again, we have to go with the cueing and the attention strategies. We have to provide them a particular specific cue to break that freeze and shift the attention or divert the attention toward to break the freeze. That is the that comes under the rescue strategies. Then we teach them the dual tasking. Dual tasking is very strategic and with a graded manner. Like initially we just work with a single task, and then we add one particular motor task, and then we complicate the motor task, and then we can add the another cognitive task along with that. So this dual task training is very important in these persons, as I told you earlier, to see the impact of the dual task on their walking. Then postural control and executive training. As I told, the most of the people in this these persons with freezing have a postural impairment. So postural control training and the executive training, like the cognitive training, is very important to manage these freezing. Some more points. The basics is teach the patient to stop first voluntarily, letting go of the motor goal and exaggerated inhibition. What does it mean? As I told you, the person, when he reached to the destination, he looks at the chair and he wants to sit down, he makes it a fascinating gait kind of things, or he freeze at that point. So it is because of the motor block, his mind doesn't support him to continue with the walking. So at that time, you have to ask the person to, wait, let go of the motor goal. Don't think of sitting on the chair, just cool down, so that to reduce the exaggerated inhibitions. That is the first thing. He can adopt a broad base of support possibly because it will at least reduce the risk of falling. Then you can teach the patient to control freezing via alternative routes. As I told you, the cueing and the attentional strategies. I will show you how the cues works. And then reinitiate the stepping using individualized strategies or cues. So one size doesn't fit all, is very apparent, like apt for these kinds of patients, because some people respond better to the visual cues, some respond to the auditory cues, some respond to the cognitive cues. Every person have a different kinds of response to the cues. So you cannot pre-plan that this kind of strategy will work in this particular persons. So that is your experience, and as you work with the Parkinson, you will find out which strategies feels better with this which kind of the patients. Then in the external cues versus the cognitive cues, the strategies in the cueing strategies, we have to think what kind of training we have to give. like external cues may be used to initiate and maintain the movement and cognitive processes. So if a person has an ignition block, like he cannot take the first step, so you have to give a external cues. And this external cue can be the visual, like some lights, some lines on the floor, or any objects in between. Or you can have some auditory thing, the person can speak 1 2 1 2, left right. Or he can use the metronome. With that, with every certain speed, they will keep on giving the sound tuck tuck tuck, like this kinds of sound. So with every sound he will take a step. So that is a auditory cues. Or you can use a proprioceptive cues, like some vibrations in the feet along with the steps. That helps. So any of these sensory stimuli can help these people to break the freezing, right? And along with that initiation, it also helps in taking the appropriate movement size. So if you are putting visual cues at a regular distance, and every time a person is achieving that particular step length, so it will normalize their movement size, right? And and it also helps to activate the attentional motor control mechanisms. Then self-prompting to walk, like high steps. So a person can use his cognitive things, like he has to take like high steps and the larger steps. So think big. There is another kinds of training in this Parkinson's called as the think big. In that, everything he tries to increase the amplitude, be it the step length or writing with the bigger strokes or speech or facial expressions. In all that, he will use this think big techniques to improve his motor task. Then some people find out useful, like count their steps while walking. So when they focus on their steps, they continue. So it's like an internal cue to the brain. That cueing is there with every 1 2 3, the keeps on coming with the steps. So that strategy also helps then in this patient. So there is a rhythmic cues versus a one-off cueing. Either you can provide a continuous cueing, or you can provide like the one cue. First a line while he gets up from the bed, there is a one cue just to break this freezing, and then the person can use his cognitive cue to continue with the walking. So this is the metronome to provide a sensory cues, and the other one is the visual cues. And this is the same lady, just I show you how much freezing she had, like all kinds of shuffling gait. Just after, within a few minutes after this visual cues. Can you see this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Visible.
So, nicely, this lady could walk with these visual cues. Mother, you can't feel that this lady has any freezing. Just within 2 minutes, this kind of change you can see in a patient, right? So the lady who has a profound freezing with these visual cue, this lady responded fantastically with the visual cues, but that doesn't mean that every patient responds so fantastic. But yes, with these is a very good technique, and many patients respond very good with these cues. Then this is a laser cane and the U-step walker. With that, whenever a person feels freezing, he can press a button in the handle, and they will see a red laser line in front, and the person takes a step to cross that line, and in that way he can walk. Same is with the walker. It also has a laser light. And that, knowing a little more about this specific strategies to break the freezing. So postural adjustment and correction to improve the anticipatory postural adjustment. So you can give a training to improve the postures, and to shift the weight and take the steps. That kinds of training specific strategy is required. Then reintegration of postural correction with the stepping. So he has to consciously control his posture while taking the steps. Then facilitate the response generation. Whenever he has to see he see any obstruction, he has to pass through a narrow pathways, or you have to take a turn. So he has to develop a response so that he doesn't develop freezing. So you have to facilitate that response generation. Then you have to prioritize the focus of attention rather than thinking on the dual task, unnecessarily thinking about the things and freezing. Focus on the walking. and dual task training of varied intensity as the patient's needs or the demands are there. This is another paper I published, like clinical outcomes of step synchronized vibration training in persons with Parkinson disease who are having the freezing of gait. We developed this called as PD shoe. This PD shoe has a very specific things, like it has a sensors to watch the gait parameters, spatial and temporal parameters. There is an insole with the sensors, and along with that, this PD shoe has the vibrators at the head of the metatarsals and on the, so which was activated whenever a patient gets freeze. So these vibrators got activated to provide them the proprioceptive cueing. So you can see this lady who participated in our trial. This is the PD shoe. So before walking, so before therapy, you see the freezing of gait. So you can see the while turning, this is the fascinating, you know, see while turning, he has a lot of freezing. With every turn, so just focus on how is she's moving the steps while turning. I told you the number of steps taken are much more than compared to the normal persons, and it's more of a en bloc turning, not a continuous turning. Now we gave them a training, and you can see the freezing has reduced a lot. Whenever she freeze, immediately the vibrators gets on, and she gets, you know, reduction in the freezing, and she can continue with the walking. So with that, I would like to end this session with this take-home message. So manage the core deficits for the freezing of gait training, like whether it's a spatiotemporal parameters or it's the postural abnormalities or the attention strategies issues are there, whatever. So manage the core deficits. Self-prompting sensory cues and cognitive cues training should be used prudently. Postural adjustment and its integration in stepping is crucial, and dual task training helps in training of the freezing of gait. With that, thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for this listening and giving me opportunity. Okay.
Thank you, Rajiv sir. Do you have, if you have any doubts, you can please proceed. It's an opportunity for us to clear our doubts in this area, because not many of us will have an opportunity to treat Parkinson's. Sir, regarding that vibrator, is it commercially available, sir?
PD shoe, it is not commercially available. We developed it. We did the science to develop it, but you know, they have like patents with that, and might be in coming time if the company buys the rights for that and make it commercially available. So it is the concept I showed you how this concept worked.
So what will be the exact indication for that patient, sir? Any person who will be having freezing, she'll be an ideal candidate for this vibrator, sir?
Yeah, this is the I told you, the cues is the training. I showed you one is the visual cues. This is the another like proprioceptive cues.
Okay.
So any kind of cues. The advantage of this proprioceptive cues is it is inbuilt in the shoes.
Okay.
So she can go anywhere in the market. Also, it will work. But you can't see the visual cues anywhere in the market unless until she uses her cognitive cues and starts working.
Okay.
Got it? Yes.
But they used to say, no, sir, with respect to Parkinsonism, it is in case if you activate the frontal lobe areas, then the amount of freezing can be reduced, because this is more of a extrapyramidal lesion. So in case if you can target frontal lobe functions,
Is there any study regarding that? I didn't read the frontal lobe because this freezing is not well understood. I showed you the motor areas is involved. That frontal area is definitely prefrontal area. The motor area is involved along with that basal ganglia, then the pedunculopontine nucleus. There is a multiple kinds of the circuitry that is involved. So it's not very focused like if we focus on the frontal frontal lobe, functioning. If we can use like RTMS, if you say in that way, if it works, you can easily target the frontal lobe with the RTMS or TDCS. But unfortunately, these studies is till date are not very useful. Of course, it can be area of research. I'm not denying that, but can't say confidently that if we do that, freezing will definitely reduce.
Okay. Sir, what will be the role of environment in freezing, sir?
Yes, I told you that like environment can be the major hurdle in patients walking. I told you narrow pathways or like the abnormal different kinds of the surface, any such kind of things or distractions in the environment, all can induce freezing in these patients. But if you train the person with the same environment, those same hurdles can become a cues for them. It's very interesting. Getting me? So, like one, while you cross the room and there is some like elevated kind of something steps in between, that can be a cause for the freeze. But if you train the person that it is a visual cue for you, whenever you approach that, you have to cross it. Getting me? So the same obstruction becomes a cue for him. So this is interesting. Yes.
Okay. Do other participants have any questions to be asked? We know that we have taken your lunch time, so.
No, this was the only safest time I could give you.
No, sir. Actually, we were expecting more than 200 participants, sir. Actually, we used to get more than that participants. Just that because we need to have it in the lunch time. I think the number has gone down.
It's my bad luck that I couldn't meet
sir,
all
fine,
these.
sir. Actually, it's a pleasure to have you, sir.
Yeah, because other times are usually not, sure of key I can give you. Somebody is presenting CRC Lucknow.
Okay, sir.
Is that okay?
So,
Any
in
other
case
doubts?
Yes, sir. Myself, Amit Kumar. Good afternoon, all of you, sir.
Yes.
Sir, one participant want to ask any relation between Parkinson disease and dystrophy?
Dystrophy means muscular dystrophy.
Only he's writing dystrophy. So
What dystrophy? It's a muscular. I know about muscular dystrophy, and there is absolutely no correlation. It's extrapyramidal lesion. That's a muscle disease. So there is no correlation at all.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Due to lack of time, we cannot opt all the questions. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thanks our respected resource person, Dr. Rajiv Agrawal, sir, in charge of physiotherapy unit NSC, AIMS, New Delhi, for enlightening us with their knowledge and interesting fact on the occasion of World Parkinson's Day. I would like to thank our directors of PDDU, NIPPD and CRC Lucknow, Mrs. Smita Jaywant, ma'am, and Mr. Ramesh Pandey, sir, for their guidance and support. I would like to thank all the participants and all the CRC staff for supporting in this webinar, for completing this webinar. Good. Thanks to all of you. Thank you so much, sir, for your knowledge sharing with us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
सर थैंक यू सर बहुत बढ़िया था सर हाँ बहुत अच्छा लगा but just that I was not able to get